Hello everybody, my name is Karen Lackey and I'm from the ESC, the Western Reserve. We're here today to talk about the foundations of prevention in a very fun and entertaining way that's going to help you throughout the school year. Before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about myself and how I got into the field of prevention. I'm a licensed therapist and I've been a social worker for 35 years. And I started in a child abuse unit. And all you had to do is see the outcomes of severe child abuse before you ask the question, what can we do to prevent this? And within a year, I was in the field of prevention, and I've been in it ever since. Next, I want to introduce Holly Jacobson.
Hi everybody, I'm Holly Jacobson. I'm a Youth Led Prevention Coordinator. I have been doing Youth Led for about 7 years. Before I started prevention, I actually am a licensed school counselor. I found prevention, and honestly, it has been truly remarkable. It's been amazing. When I was doing my internships and my practicums and all of that, it was very, very stressful, and schools are going through so much. There's so many things on principals and counselors and teachers' plates. It was crazy. And so when I found the field of prevention, it was really just like, how do we help young people? How do we help the schools to just really be the most effective that they can be and not be so stressed and so worried about everything else that they're supposed to be doing. So hopefully in the next, the time that we do this, you guys will be able to take some of this away and really, be like, yay, I can do this.
Hi everyone, I'm Jenny Canganelli. I'm a community prevention specialist with the ESC of the Western Reserve. I, like Holly, am a licensed school counselor. My specialty is really, my interest is most with middle school, high school students, and I really wanted to be able to get into the schools and help the students, support the students, and this position in prevention has really let me do that. And also, like Holly said, supporting the school, the teachers, the counselors, the administrators, because everyone is overwhelmed, overworked, and really making a difference with young people.
All right, so why we are qualified to do this training. We have been doing prevention in Geauga County for 25 years in schools. It's rare that prevention specialists, Ohio certified prevention specialists and certified prevention specialists work in the schools embedded as much as we do, and we have over the last 25 years. Also, we've been recognized by the Ohio MAS, by the Foundation for Youth Investment, and also from the Ohio Youth Led Prevention Network for the development of quality prevention programs, evidence-based programs. So that's one. Also, we are an SAPST trainers. We are a legacy program for Ohio Youth Led Prevention, meaning that we've been training since 2016 to develop that evidence-based program in the region. And also, we are the regional leaders for the Regional Learning Collaborative for the Ohio Youth Led Prevention Network. So we train a 15-county area in youth-led prevention programs. So that's our background, what we've done, why we're here to teach you about the foundations of prevention and how it works in schools. By the time we get to the end of this training, what we want you to do is we really want you to have 4 main concepts. One, don't be scared. Prevention is what you do every day. It builds on what you do. You develop relationships right now. You've got your PBIS. There's social emotional learning standards you try to address. What we're here to do is try to put those things into a comprehensive plan with evidence-based approaches that work and teach you how to do it without adding a lot of things. A lot of what we're going to talk about is how and why it makes your job easier. There's a lot of data, a lot of research that says prevention is so much easier than the way we normally do things, which is reactive. We wait for things to happen in school, we react, we don't know what to do, and we just go out and try to do what we can. Not usually an effective approach, and we're going to learn a little bit about why. And then lastly, what I want to do is also give you a little bit of a difference between what education is and what prevention is. A lot of times people, even professionals, use those two things synonymously, and they're really not. So by the time you're done, we hope you're going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to give you some tools and a new perspective, and hopefully come re-energized in the fall to be ready for some of the social emotional issues we might be facing when the kids return to school.
So have you ever felt like this? Yeah, here's the deal. There's a lot of things that teachers are, the stress that they're under, that school has so many million things going on. So why are we talking about prevention, right? Prevention is so beneficial in so many different ways. If we use a comprehensive planned prevention approach, right? We are going to increase test scores. You are going to, decrease risky behaviors. It is going to help with less stress. It is going to be super cost effective compared to other, types of therapies or counseling or, programming that is put into the school. So there's a lot of benefits to prevention that we're going to be talking about. So what we want you guys to do is go ahead and grab out a piece of paper and think about every program or campaign or service that is in your school or in your community or what your young people are seeing, whether it's in your classroom or somebody else's, and literally write down as many things that you think fit under the prevention scope as you can. So you're going to pause the video for a few minutes and write that list up. When you're finished writing it up, go ahead and unpause us.
Okay, so now that you've listed all the programs, people, speakers, assemblies, all that stuff that comes into your school, hold on to that because we're going to get to that a little bit later in this session. Biggest thing we want you to take away today is what prevention is and what prevention is not. A lot of times what we see in schools is there's a lot of confusion, there's a misperception of what prevention actually is, especially in the education field. And so us working in schools on a daily basis, we've really come to realize, and through our training, what prevention is not. A lot of times people think having a one-time assembly where you gather all your students together, you have a speaker come in, maybe whatever the assembly might be. Can it be effective? Yes. Is it a way to get information across? Yes. But that one thing alone does not constitute prevention. Another typical thing we see are mock accidents, where you see the wrecked car in front of schools, especially high schools, a lot of times during prom season. Does it send an effective message? Yes. But is that considered prevention? No. Okay. Another big thing is scare tactics. A lot of times, we will see teachers and programs and agencies and organizations go into schools and they're really using scare tactics with the students to try to prevent them from doing drugs, drinking, having sex, okay? Do the scare tactics work? Are they effective? No. Statistics show that they are not effective ways to prevent, okay? Karen's gonna talk to you about the biggest misperception, like I said, we see in education with prevention, and clarify that up for you now.
Okay, so what I want to do is when I first started in prevention in classrooms, this is the purview that I look through everything with. And I want you, and I know you do it the same. If I'm going to take a minute in a school of academic time away from kids, it better work. It better be quality. Just to take kids out, but as Jen said, for an accident, to look at a mock accident, scares them for a second, doesn't change anything. Same with assembly. They get all excited for a day, doesn't change anything. So what I want to do is now give you the biggest thing that we do in education, where we take so many minutes academic time, and it's not necessarily effective, at least not by itself. And that goes under the moniker of education alone is not prevention. You hear people say all the time, just tell kids this, just tell them that, just give them these statistics. It doesn't work. Now there's value to educating kids, but it's only one piece of what you need for a comprehensive plan. So here's some examples. You know, we all are required in schools to do dating violence, right? We have to give kids information on dating violence. Dating violence prevention programs, where they do the little wheel of how violence progresses. Great information. Information alone. It's not prevention. Old programs like the old drug and alcohol prevention programs. They would give information on impacts of drugs on the body. Great information. Kids should know that. But especially depending on age appropriateness, they aren't relating their future health to when they're in 6th grade or 7th grade or 8th grade. It's information, it's valuable, but it doesn't change behavior. So if you take anything away from what you learned during this session and looking at your list of the activity you just did, we're going to have you take a look whether it's education alone. Does it have a skill base? Does it have a social norms approach? Does it have an attitude change? Is it comprehensive? Does it have other pieces and parts that really promote behavioral change? If not, it's education alone. There's still value to the information, but education alone is not prevention.
So we just heard a lot about like what prevention is not. So what is prevention, right? So prevention is not just, oh, we're going to prevent drug use. Prevention is preventing any negative behavior whatsoever. So whether it is drug use, whether it's vaping, whether it's a mental health concern, whether it's self-harm, whatever it is, prevention is more than just drug use, right? So it's changing a negative behavior that we don't want to see. You know, prevention also is, it's evidence-based, but not necessarily like, oh, it's, you know, it's been evidence-based 50 years ago. Like, it has to be something that is proven to work, something that is comprehensive, something that is a planned approach, right? Because a lot of times things happen in our schools and we're reactive, right? Like, so if, let's, you know, something happens and all of a sudden we're like, oh my gosh, this happened, now we're going to bring in one-time assemblies, we're going to bring speakers, we're going to throw everything at our young people. That's not prevention, right? It's education, yes, but is that prevention? No, right? So we can't just be reactive to everything. We have to take a more, like a planned approach here, right? We have to figure out, before these things happen, how do we help prevent them? How do we change those behaviors before they even start to turn into something negative that we don't want to see, right? Because you, I'm sure, being in the school is exhausted already with all the behaviors that are going on in the class and everything that's happening. And so how do we change those behaviors before you feel like you're that woman that was 150 years old in that picture, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to talk to you more about, like, how do we identify that approach to what prevention really is?
Okay, so now we're going to expand your view of prevention. We're going to give you 2 global categories prevention fits in. One is direct service. That's the stuff we're used to seeing all the time. It's kind of what jumps into our head. There are several ways we can do direct service. A classroom program, small groups. If we're looking at your PBIS pyramid, classroom program for everybody, all 7th graders, that's going to be your tier 1. Small groups, maybe indicated kids who are struggling in school, children of divorce, you know, trying to get social skills groups. Tier 2, small groups, pull-out groups. Tier 3, direct service, one-on-one with kids. Those kids who are identified, again, PBIS, MTSS, those kids who are really of high need, have issues, have special considerations, maybe kids with IEP goals that are behavioral. Then there's special interventions just for those kids. Now, those are the easy ones. Those are direct service, one-on-one with kids. There's a category that makes prevention comprehensive that are indirect. Okay, so for indirect services, what we like to do is we like to give, one, information. Anytime you give information dissemination, that's more of an indirect category. You are doing a classroom program and you want to reinforce it by putting a poster on the wall with information on it, information dissemination. You want to hand a brochure to parents and let them know what their kids are going through, but you don't talk to a parent, information dissemination. You don't see them. You want to put something on your website, information dissemination. So there's also indirect approaches. Another indirect approach is what we call social norms campaigns. We know as a fact in prevention, behavior doesn't change unless you change 3 things. You have to change students' knowledge, you have to change their skills or ability to act on that knowledge, and you have to change their attitude or the perception of the problem where you're trying to get them to change. Because if they don't want to, they're not going to do it. That's an attitude change. Those are hard. Social norms campaigns get to the attitude change. What they do is they try to make, like in the some of the older programs, not doing something cool. Make a way that it fits in. Changing the social norms around behavior. Ohio Youth-Led Prevention has a group called We Are the Majority, because the majority of students are not, by far, involved in drugs and alcohol. So they have a group and they have a rally of you're proud to be We Are the Majority. That's a social norms changing campaign, wanting kids to recognize that not doing drugs actually is normative, not the other way around. So those are social norms campaigns. You'll see little cute, like, remember the click it or tick it or click it or tick it. I don't even remember what it is. But it's a campaign that's a quick slogan, changes social norms about putting a seatbelt on when you get in. So those are the two categories of prevention, and we are going to go through them and break them down for you. So when you're looking around your school building, you're looking at your list of what you do. Got it. We do that, that, and that. We're going to have you bring those things together into a comprehensive plan and a little bit more detail on how to do that.
All right, so what we want you guys to do is go ahead, get back out your piece of paper where you have all of those services and programs and all of those things listed. And what we want you to do is, really think about which do you feel is direct and what do you feel is indirect, right? So if you have a campaign that's going on in your school, where would that fall? Indirect. If you have a specific program that's coming into your school where they're talking to your students, that is more of a direct approach, right? So we want you guys to just pause the video for a second or a minute, however long it takes you, and go through and decide whether they're direct or indirect.
Awesome. Thanks for taking the time to do that activity. We are doing step by step, as you see, and by the time we get to the end of this, you guys are going to be experts. So what we're going to do now is we are going to talk about what a comprehensive spectrum of services look like. It's called the continuum of care. Now, as we throw this up, what we want to do is walk through it a step at a time. On the left side of the half circle that you see is the term promotion. These are activities in a school system or in a community that are designed to build attributes in kids to make them successful. So if you do any type of character building activities, if you do respect, how to increase respect, if you do some of the social skills activities or the asset building activities, if you develop relationships with kids, these are promotional things. They're all positive. They are promoting positive behaviors and skills. Nothing about negative behavior. Next, if you take one step up on your half circle, it's called universal prevention. Universal prevention is when we do prevention for everybody. We do a classroom program that is for everyone. We do an assembly as part of a comprehensive initiative that is for everyone. That is universal. Every student gets it no matter what. The next step up on the left side of your half circle is called selected prevention. So selected prevention is simply when there are risk factors or indicators like, oh, this group of kids may be at risk. Maybe they need a little more support. So again, back to the example I used earlier, if you have a large number of kids who have issues at home or coming from a divorced family and you're seeing some of the same behaviors, that's selected. Nothing's happened yet. They haven't really shown any negative behaviors, but you know that they're a little bit at risk. You want to give them supports. The last one is an indicated prevention, and that's near the top of your circle. The indicated prevention is simply those people who have started to experiment with certain behaviors. Maybe you have kids that have had one caught with tobacco at school. You know, there's not a lot of big indicators or big issues or problems, but you just see enough, you're like, okay, we're going to try to intervene now, and we're going to try to create an initiative, a strategy, or a program, or a group to intervene and try to help that young person take a different turn, a different direction. So as you see, we've gone up to halfway through in the prevention in this continuum. Now the right side, and here's where I want you really to think about your programs list as well. To the right side, what we know is we start the treatment side of the spectrum of services. This is in a school system. It will be something like if you have a CPST worker, case management. A corrections officer comes in because there's a student on probation and meets with them just to make sure everything's going well and they're doing well in school. So any kind of case management services. There's also, if you have a on-site therapist, there will be a therapist come and visit students who have some type of therapeutic goals or who are in therapy and part of their issue is adjusting in school. Therapist comes in, works with that student in school. Also therapeutic groups for students who have, maybe students of trauma who are having difficulty with adjustment. Those are all on the treatment side. The last one is maintenance. Once we get to maintenance, it's those students who have been removed or have exhibited severe behaviors, for example, on recovery high schools. They've been through recovery, they've been through treatment, and they go to a special recovery high school because they are able to maintain that type of at-risk behavior in a school environment. It could also be young people who are coming back from some kind of a group home or some kind of a residential setting and being integrated back into the school environment. There's maintenance things you can do. So as you see, a continuum of care that's comprehensive. It involves a wide range of prevention services. On the right side, it involves a wide range of treatment or therapeutic services after the problem has already reared its ugly head. So that is what a continuum of care looks like in prevention, but don't be scared because you do it already. What it looks like in a school system is your PBIS pyramid. So if you're looking at your tier 1 kids, that's your promotion and your universal prevention. All those things everybody gets. They can earn rewards. They get the lessons from their teachers. That is tier 1 all the way. Promotion, primary prevention, universal prevention. Okay? The second is when you get up to your tier 2 in the pyramid, that is your universal, or that's your selected and your indicated. Those kids who are just exhibiting certain behaviors or certain risk factors, they need a little bit more intervention. Okay? Do it every day. Then you get up to the tier 3 kids. Those are those students, only up to 10% maximum of your students need tier 3 services. If you're looking at the half circle, that's the entire right side of the circle. Those are your tier 3 kids. So it is the exact same thing in a different shape. And what we are going to do is we're going to have you work all these prevention concepts into your PBIS pyramid. Because again, like we said, you do this stuff every day. We just want you to do it in a comprehensive way.
All right, so what we're going to have you guys do is we're going to have you go ahead again, get out that piece of paper that you have all of your services listed on. And now that Karen has explained, what prevention and promotion is and what treatment and maintenance is, through your continuum of care, we're going to actually throw that slide up for you. What we want you to do is go ahead and write on your paper which ones are prevention, right? Which ones fall under the universal selected or indicated prevention, and which ones fall under the treatment and maintenance section. So go ahead, tell us whether it's prevention or treatment. All right, mark that on your papers, pause the video, and we'll be back with you in a second.
So welcome back. Thank you for going ahead and looking at your list again. I hope it was a little bit easier for you to identify what is prevention versus what is treatment that's being done in your schools. There is a process that we use as a tool. It's called the Strategic Prevention Framework, and it really is a tool that we use in the field of prevention, and it has 5 easy steps, okay? And again, a lot of this is things that you do already as educators, as in-school professionals, and it starts with the assessment phase. It goes to capacity, planning, implementation, and evaluation. And Holly's going to walk you through a real-life example of the SPIF that is used probably most days in your schools.
Yeah. So yeah, even though those words sound scary and like, oh my gosh, there's another thing that has to happen, this is something that educators do every single day. So think about it. If you're a math teacher, right? So let's say you're teaching algebra. What do you do when your kids first come in, right? When you start off the year, they're coming into your classroom, you don't know who these students are, you don't know what their skills are. What you do is you assess them, right? You do a form, you evaluate it. You figure out where are they at, where is your starting point with your students, right? So you know where they're at, you're assessing it. Then you figure out, what do they have the capacity to do? Is this a class that is your honors class? Do they have the ability to move quickly because they're better math learners? Are they a little more challenged with math learning? Where are they at? What do they have the capacity to do? What do they understand? Is that topic harder to understand or is it easier to understand? Like, so what is our capacity? Then the next step is like planning. Okay, so now you as the teacher have to say, how am I going to increase their knowledge and their learning of algebra? Like, how are we going to get them to figure out this problem? How are we going to get them to figure out how to do the next steps in your planning? So you plan your lessons, right? You do that every day. Then you have your implementation. You teach your class, right? You get up there and you do your math problems on the board. You're teaching your students how to actually use this in their everyday lives, right? Like, how do they use these materials? And then what do? You give them a test, right? That's the evaluation piece. That's the last part of the SPIF, is you're evaluating. What did they learn? Did they learn enough? Do they still need a little more help? Did it work? Did it not work? And if you're finding, 80% of your students are passing, well, then you know that, hey, how you taught that lesson was great and your students are good and you can move on to the next phase. If things aren't, if a lot of the students are failing on a certain question, maybe there's something that needs reevaluated. So that right there is something you do every single day in your classrooms. It's nothing new. It's what we do every day.
All right, so now what we are here to do is close you up for the first session because we've given you a lot of information. You've got a list of things you do, you've got some parameters to look at that list, and you have some new definitions, informations, and tools. So the SPIF is our example of how we start to create a comprehensive plan. Because like we said when we started this, we want to save you time, we want to improve your students' behavior, save you stress, and have you gauge all of those positive outcomes you see with a quality comprehensive prevention program. If you've learned nothing else, remember, education and information alone is not prevention. We're here to make your job easier.
Prevention might be a very new term, very new concept to many of you that are working in schools, but it is something you do every single day. You go through that SPIF in your classrooms all the time. This really is what you do every day.
So we're just going to kind of help figure out how do we make that more a comprehensive plan approach so that we can really ease that stress on you guys, ease the stress at school, decrease those behaviors, unwanted behaviors of your students, and really just make your job easier. And the other thing is, what we're going to be covering in the next section is a lot of times we just throw at the wall, and we don't want to do that, right? We want to make sure that we give you the right tools and the right materials to really make this work for you. So we are super excited for the next session. Our contact information is on here if you guys have any questions before then. If not, we will see you then.
Thank you. See you next session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everybody. We're here again with Foundations of Prevention, Session 2. Karen Lackey, Holly Jacobson, and Jenny Canganelli will be here for the next session. And just as a reminder, what we are here for is give you the information, for you to create your own comprehensive prevention plan based on what you do already. Tools, skills, and as much information as we can give you to try to do that. So as a quick review from the last session, what we did is we went over a few very, very basic things. What prevention is and what it is not. We talked a little bit about scare tactics, information only prevention. We also talked a little bit about direct versus indirect prevention, because there is a wide range of activities you participate in. Then we also talked a little bit about the difference between prevention and treatment, and that was the half circle spectrum that we worked in. So you know when prevention stops and the options you're choosing turn into treatment. That is not prevention practice. And lastly, we gave you a planning tool, and that planning tool was called the SPIF, the Strategic Prevention Framework. You know, and it looks very, very much like something you've never seen before, an odd alien entity. But all it is a planning tool. It's what you do every day. It's how you plan a math lesson. It's how you plan a social studies lesson. It is just a planning tool that we want you to use. We also had you participate in an activity. So hopefully you have that piece of paper where we had you writing down what kind of prevention strategies and initiatives you do right now.
And so if you actually don't have your paper from last time, just go ahead. You're going to pause the video here in a second. What we'd like you to do is write down all of the initiatives, programs, services, campaigns that are going on in your school, list them down. What we had you do last session was decide if they were direct or indirect, and then we had you decide if they were prevention or treatment based on that continuum of care. So if you have it, fantastic. Just keep on playing the video. If you don't have it, go ahead, pause the video, write down that list, and determine whether they are prevention or treatment, and we will use that for the rest of this session. So perfect, great. If you have your list, awesome. So what we would like to do now is I want you guys to kind of imagine. Have you ever played the game Whack-A-Mole, right? You know, like the little things that are just popping up out of everywhere, right? So you have the little moles that are popping up out of everywhere, and you try to hit them, right? So when you first start, you hit the Whack-A-Mole with one hammer. And then next thing you know, another one pops up and you try to hit it. And so before you know, by the end of the game, you're like going like crazy. You're just trying to hit this mole all over the place. Well, sometimes what happens is we just kind of do that in our general everyday lives. Like, do you ever feel like when you're in the classroom that you have a group of like 25 students, and then all of a sudden you're trying to, they're all like little moles. Not that you're gonna whack them, but they're all like little moles, and you just want to be like, oh my gosh, and you're trying to like manage all the different behaviors, manage, you know, helping a student, you know, understand a problem. You're trying to do all these different things, and it's like before you know, at the end of the day, is there, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm exhausted. I have no idea what even just happened. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take you through a way to use everything that you're already doing, but more in a planned, comprehensive approach, so that you're not like that, just all over the place trying to hit the moles, right? It's going to be planned so that everything is working more for your benefit, so you're not as stressed, you're not as exhausted, and we're just going to kind of reorganize this stuff. So there are 6 different prevention strategies that we're going to discuss here that are going to kind of help guide us where we need to go. So when we're explaining these prevention strategies to you, what we're going to do is we're gonna think of a really big topic that is going on in schools right now. And I'm sure you may have heard that vaping is a huge issue. It's a concern, it's a problem. You know, we're trying to attack it from all different angles. So we're gonna use that as we go through the next 6 strategies and show you how vaping, we could take a comprehensive planned approach to addressing that behavior.
Okay. So by the end, what we're going to give you essentially is these prevention strategies. There's 6 of them. It's going to be like you are going to have 6 hammers to whack away at the whack-a-moles throughout the entire problem, be it vaping or any other topic. So we're going to try to give you all 6 hammers right now, and we're going to set up how it works. So the first hammer we're going to talk about is called information dissemination. That is prevention strategy number 1. You will see that in a vaping campaign, such as hanging posters in your hallway, you know, that have facts about vaping or anti-vaping messages. One-way communication, just giving them information. The other example of information dissemination is if you send information home to parents. Okay, here's what you should know about vaping you may not know. It's not harmless. Or here's our school policy. That is another one-way communication, just giving information. So it's very important to know that if you only use information dissemination, it's an ineffective strategy. Information alone doesn't change behavior and is not prevention. Okay, so then the next hammer we're going to give you, next prevention strategy is called prevention education. Now, this is one of the direct examples. We have direct communication with students, and examples can be if a doctor comes in and talks to a health class and talks to them about what really happens with your lungs. What are the real health risks of vaping? Great, can be two-way communication. Next, what if you have a parent education night? Parents get to ask questions of an expert or ask questions about anything about vaping. You have two-way communication. So that's a direct strategy that is prevention education. If you have the classroom program, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. This is one of the biggest things we try to get across as our point two is education alone. Just because something is in a classroom does not mean it's quality prevention. And this is where I mentioned a little bit in session one. If you are going to invite any program into your classroom, any program into your school, we have a little tool we like you to use to try to make sure it's quality prevention, and that's called KSAs. If you want to change any behavior for young people, there has to be three things in any classroom program that you put in. It has to address K, knowledge, S, skills, and A, attitudes. So that's what I want you to check for every time you look at any kind of program that comes into your classroom. Does it give new information? Does it teach a skill so they have the ability to use that information? Okay, how do you want me to use this? Do you want me to communicate it? Do you want me to practice it? How do you want me to use it? That's skills. And then last, the A is attitude. You need to give them a reason. You have to give them motivation to want to use the skill and to use the information. So KSA, knowledge, skill, and attitude, that's a quality prevention education program in a classroom.
All right, so the third hammer that we're going to talk about, or the third prevention strategy, is actually called alternative activities. And so alternative activities are activities that are made to reduce the opportunities for risky behaviors, right? So it might be, we do a anti-vaping group, right? So there might be a group that meets during lunch or a club or whatever. It gives them another opportunity besides partaking in a behavior we don't want them to. Mentoring, right? Some people say, well, what does mentoring have to do with an alternative activity? We might have a mentoring group where you have a high school student who's working with a middle school student, and they're not users of any sort of substance. They are really working towards like helping young people make their best decision, right? That could be a really good alternative activity. Or maybe it's, you have a pickup game every Saturday night where young people are coming and, playing baseball on Saturdays. It gives them another opportunity. Then the fourth strategy that we're going to be talking about, or our fourth hammer, is environmental. And environmental is a population-wide, right? It is a population-wide strategy that is used to change attitude, it is used to change beliefs, and it is used to change policy. So this might be a school policy change. Maybe the school also all of a sudden has to change their policy to put vaping into place, or anti-vaping into place, right? So they never had that in their policy before, and now it needs to change. Maybe it's an anti-vaping social media campaign where you have young people that are posting positive messages about, reasons not to vape, and all of those different things. So that is another of our 6 strategies that is helpful.
The fifth prevention strategy we're going to talk to you about today, or the fifth hammer in your whack-a-mole image, is community-based process. This is any collective effort that is going to create change. So if you think community, you're going to think collective effort. Some of these might involve a community vaping task force that is scheduled and arranged to meet, or maybe a tobacco coalition, or a parent group, or any type of specific grassroots group that comes together to try to create that community change. And our final prevention strategy is problem ID and referral. Really what that is meant to help with is when a student is identified, when their behavior is identified and it needs more than just regular interventions that go beyond prevention, that's what problem ID and referral is. This could be a referral to the school counselor or possibly a referral to JFS. That is what problem ID and referral refers to.
All right, so imagine if we had all 6 of these strategies working towards vaping, right? It is not just information. It is not just things that we're putting out there. It is not just an activity. These are all a way to comprehensively put everything together. So if we're using all of these different strategies, what it's showing us is that those hammers are going to start knocking down that unwanted behavior that we're seeing. So what we're going to actually have you guys do is we're going to have you pause the video here in a second. Take out that list again of all your services that are in your school. And what we want you to do is really just very briefly, you don't have to like go through it in detail, but very briefly look through them and determine overall what area of the prevention strategies does your strategies in your school or your activities in your school seem to focus on. Are they more information dissemination? Are they more alternative activities? Those are community-based. What is the overall realm where your strategies fall? Okay, so now that you guys have looked at your list, I'm wondering what your list looks like, right? So we're going to give you a life example of a school that we've worked with, right? So we have school A, where they're a great school, they love their kids, they work really hard, they're stressed, they got a million things going on, and then all these things start to happen, right? We realize that they have duplication of services. There's 3 or 4 different people coming in and talking to their kids about relationships. There are all these different things that are happening. Then a suicide happens, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, right, I'm gonna throw all this stuff at the wall. And then we're all over the place, right? So now they're bringing in one-time speakers, and they're having mass assemblies, and then they're trying to bring in therapists, and they're doing all of these different things. That is a reactive approach to something that's happened, right? So obviously this is prevention, which means that's before. So what we did is we sat down with the school and we're like, okay, what is going on? So we did an entire assessment of what they had happening in their school, all of the services, all of the programs, all of everything that was going on in their school. And what we found in their list of like 50 different things is that there was multitudes of things that were duplicates. There were things that they thought were prevention that were not prevention, as you guys are seeing from your list, that sometimes we identify things as prevention, but they're really not, and that's okay, but how do we make it a comprehensive approach to address those behaviors? And then what we also found is that majority of their services were actually in the continuum of care, were in that treatment. It was not in the prevention spot. So what we did is we actually sat down with them, we worked with them, we really thought, like, how do we help them? Because now not only did they already just have stuff everywhere, but now they're trying to react from a crisis. So we basically sat down and said, what are we going to do? How can we help you use the service that you already have in your school, use the things that are already going on? So 1, it's not costing you money. 2, you're making sure it's a comprehensive approach, right? 3, we want to take the stress off of you and your teachers. We just want to make this easier for everybody. And so we really just sat back and said, this this is where we are. This is where we go from here.
And I think the part that so many of us can identify with is in that moment of crisis, when you realized what their services really were, there was so much pain involved. For any of you who've lost a student, I apologize, because the pain that the administrators feel, the teachers feel, the kids feel, and everything that goes on after that, like we talked about in session 1, we want to avoid all that. We want to be as proactive as possible. So unfortunately, this came about, what we're going to talk about next, out of a horrible situation, but the things we identified really are very much what we're trying to teach you to do for yourself. It saves all that pain. Not only to mention days of education not happening because it couldn't go on, and hopefully trying to be a little bit more proactive and have none of those things happen based on what you really already do. So you're getting a little bit of what we did. So now what we're going to do is show you where they ended up. And again, don't be scared.
Yeah, don't be scared. This is going to look scary and it's going to look like, oh my gosh, I do not have the time to do this. This is way too much. But here's the deal. Like I said, we literally used everything that they were already using in their school, and really just kind of reorganized and reworked and made sure everything was working together. And what we found out is that they were saying, oh, well, we have this effort and we have this effort and we have all these things. But the concern was not necessarily the kids' behavior. It was not necessarily, kids were skipping class or they were whatever. We found that there was a basis underlying problem and concern that we were able to address by putting together the strategic plan. We were able to use the community-based process where we brought multitude of people throughout our community together. They came up with a way to, how do we refer our students that are at the next level that need to move on? How do we give information to our schools, to our parents, to our students, to our staff? How do we educate them? How do we educate our teachers? In handling situations that they were addressing personally? How do we educate our parents? How do we educate our students? Then they were like, well, we also need to provide activities and opportunities for these young people to be involved. And then as well as they had to change their environment. They had to change their, the attitudes of themselves, the policies that were going on. And so all of those 6 strategies came together to really show that they were doing wonderful with what they had, but when they put it all together in this approach, it really, really started to change the environment. It started to change the students. It started to relieve the teachers of their stress and their anxiety and everything that they had to do. And we started collecting data, and through that, the quarterly data that we're getting is remarkable, the change that the students and the staff is seeing.
And I think the thing also, as well as that map is very scary, there is nothing on that map that does not align perfectly with their PBIS matrix. Nothing. And when Holly was talking about the community-based process, when we brought partners and community providers in, they're always knocking on your door as a guidance counselor. They're always knocking on your door as principal. Hey, we have this program, we have this program. We coordinated them in a community-based process to say, yes, you're invited in, but here is what we need you to work on. Here's our goals and objectives. And we want you to understand what PBIS is. We want you to speak our same language. We want you to give out our reward bucks. Everybody's got their little reward slips. The providers now are initiated in the process. So it is a perfectly aligned community-based process that hits all 6 CSAP strategies that is aligned with PBIS. So it really is. It's a magical, magical process. And it's been fun to watch. So
Absolutely.
Okay, where we got their data?
Yeah.
Next. Okay,
Right.
Here's the fun part.
Woo, data.
All right. So you have to start, if you recall when we had talked about in session 1, the SPIF, the Strategic Prevention Framework, everything we do in a comprehensive plan starts with assessment or data. So what we thought, wow, what do you even survey first? We just can't continue to survey kids. So we landed in an area that was an assessment of risk and protective factors. It's a very, very big concept in prevention. And this concept has to do with attributes in a child's life that either put them at risk of developing unhealthy behaviors or protects them from developing unhealthy behaviors. And these are things that are internal and things that are in their environment. So say, for example, if you have family strengths and family bonds, could be a protective factor if they're strong, could be a risk factor if they're weak. School climate is one as well. Do they feel welcome in school and safe at school? That's environmental, strength or a weakness, a risk factor or a protective factor. And then something internal, such as it's their own self-image, their own confidence in feeling empowered or in control of their lives. So these are all indicators, risk and protective factors, that we said we are going to start at the base point and we're going to see what our kids have. And that's where we started. So what we want you to glean from this is there is an organization, if some of you may have heard, called the Search Institute. And the Search Institute calls those attributes 40 developmental assets. And in the 40 developmental assets, they choose 40 such attributes, and they have a survey there where you can measure them. As Holly referred to the quarterly survey, we do the survey at the beginning of the year, after 1 quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters, and again at the end of the year, to see if the strategies that we put in across the 6 hammers are working to impact those things. Because we know something from Search, which is some cool data, which is always good to know, that anytime young people have high number of developmental assets out of those 40, these behaviors go down. Teen pregnancy goes down, drug use goes down, dropout goes down, and delinquency goes down. And these things are measured across years and years, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of students. So what we want to do is we want to bolster those assets. We want to increase those protective factors and reduce the risk factors in young people's environments. And we can do that school-wide in many ways. We can help parents do that, family, in many ways. We can involve our community to help build assets in the community as well. That's a developmental assets approach, risk and protective factors. So that's how we started with School A. That's the bottom line that we use for our data, and that's how we plan which of those hammers we were going to use. And again, in a short amount of time, it worked out to have solid impacts across multiple parameters with our students.
So we just want to thank you all for joining us for these 2 brief sessions on the foundations of prevention. We hope that you gained some new knowledge, and hopefully you're excited about bringing prevention and all of these prevention strategies into your schools. We have found them to be incredibly effective, but it takes that comprehensive prevention plan that we've been talking about. We promise it will make your job easier. Most of this is nothing you are not already doing every single day with your students. And education alone and just giving out information is not prevention. It can be a wonderful component of it, but you need the help of those other strategies, and you need that plan from the SPIF, that tool that's going to bring it all together to really, really, really develop that comprehensive prevention approach. So we thank you very much for joining us these last 2 sessions. We are excited to come and meet some of you, and Karen's going to let you know where we go from here.
Absolutely. Again, thank you all very much. Hopefully you can tell how excited we are about this work, because we've seen it be so successful and help so many kids. But as we said in the beginning of the first session, we are regional trainers. We are from the ESC of the Western Reserve, and we're here to help you. If you need help with your plan or pulling all these concepts together, just call on us. We will be there. Also, if you would like any further professional development or training, or for us actually to come in person, which is a lot more fun, I promise, we will certainly be there. It's what we do. It's what we're charged with doing. So we're here to help you out. So thank you so much. We appreciate your time, and hopefully we will see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.